I want to talk a moment today about grace and law. Sometimes we mix these two together, and it is very dangerous in doing that. You know, it is commonly held in many churches today, and rightly so, that there is nothing that anybody can do to be saved apart from grace through faith. We can tell the worst of people that it's nothing that in them, but that God's grace is sufficient for them to be saved. And they would be rightly so in saying that. But then what happens once they are saved, or once they are reconciled to God, which is really a better term nowadays than being saved. Reconciled to God comes from 2 Corinthians 5. Once they're reconciled to God, that now they have to get back under the law will show them how to live. And many times we even specifically use the 10 Commandments, that, okay, now that you're saved and you're reconciled to God and you have faith in Christ, now get under these 10 Commandments and it'll teach you how to live. It is a misuse and misunderstanding of the law, or the 10 Commandments. See, the law is made up of 613 commandments, and it started with what's called the Decalogue, which is the 10 Commandments. But what happens is we don't have an understanding of why God gave the law, or what the covenant of the law was for in the beginning. When we bring people back under that law, we almost are deifying man, saying, well, we can now be good enough. Now that we're saved, we know there was nothing we could do to ever be saved, but now that we are, we know that we can be acceptable and pleasing to you, God, by our behavior. So we go back under the law and try to become acceptable to God, whether it's through the actual law, the 10 Commandments, or sometimes we even make a religious rule unto ourselves, hoping to have power over our flesh and hoping to have power to be living the victorious Christian life for God. We make these religious rules, and there's never power under that. It's always the same model, by grace through faith. In fact, it says without faith, it's impossible to please God. So what are we supposed to do? What is the use of the commandments? The commandments have a very specific use. In fact, in 2 Corinthians 3, he calls the 10 Commandments very specifically, as they're written on the tablets of stone, the ministry of death and the ministry of condemnation. Remember that Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. And when one person comes to God, comes to Christ, they now have his life in them. And he says, I've come so they may have life and have life abundantly. That is him. But why would we then go back to that ministry of death and the ministry of condemnation when we have something so far better? We have the ministry of life in us. Well, it's because we don't have an understanding of what the commandments are for. What was the use of the law to begin with? Now, Paul puts a very specific passage in Galatians 3 on the use of the law. And this is in Galatians 3, 23 through 25. Let me read it to you. It says, Now before faith came, we were held captive under the law, imprisoned until the coming of faith would be revealed. So then the law was our guardian, or our tutor, as some translations will say, our guardian, until Christ came. There's a big until in there, in order that we might be justified by faith. See, the law is the mechanism that brings us to our own death, that says, well, what can we do to be saved? Now faith has come. Now look at 25. But now that faith has come, we are no longer under that guardian. You are no longer under that law. Romans 6:14 says that we are now not under law, but under grace. See, it's grace that will teach us to live our lives, to live a godly life. We only think of grace many times for salvation, but grace is God's influence over our heart. It teaches us to live an upright and godly life, as 2 Titus 2:11 says. Think about these things today. You can't be under both. You're either under one or the other. We have a church that has become lukewarm by mixing these together, having one foot in Moses' old covenant and having one foot in the new covenant. Go place your faith and trust completely in God, completely in Christ, in the new covenant, in who you now are because of this new covenant, and he'll never let you down. Thank you for watching this. Thank you for this video devotional in Promised Grace Ministries. To check more out on these, go to www.promisedgrace.com. Thanks for watching.